Hey there, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that invisible force that powers, well, pretty much our entire modern world, electricity. From your phone to your lights, it's everywhere, and we're going to break down exactly how it works.
So let's just start with the big question, right? The one we're here to answer. What is this invisible force that runs everything around us?
All right, here's what we've got on tap. We're going to start super small with the building blocks of matter, figure out how to get them flowing, then understand the forces that actually push them around. After that, we'll look at electricity's amazing magnetic partner. And finally, the two types of power you use every single day. Ready? Let's get into it.
Okay, so we have to start small. I mean, really small. We're talking about the atom. Why? Because absolutely everything, you, me, this screen, it's all made of atoms. And if you want to get electricity, you first have to get the atom.
So inside every single atom, you've got three main players. Right in the center, the nucleus, you have your protons, which have a positive charge, and your neutrons, which are, neutral, no charge. And then, whizzing around that center, you have these tiny negatively charged particles called electrons.
And here's the kicker. The protons and neutrons, they're pretty much locked in place. But those little electrons on the outside, they can move. And their movement from one atom to the next, that is electricity. It's really that simple at its core. It's just moving electrons. Okay, so electrons can move. Great, but how do we get them to go where we want them to go? How do we wrangle them to actually do useful stuff for us?
Well, it turns out it all depends on the material we're talking about. Some materials, we call them conductors, think of copper or pretty much any metal, they have electrons that are held on really loosely, so they can just hop from one atom to the next, no problem. But other materials, which we call insulators, like rubber or glass, they cling to their electrons for dear life. They stop the flow cold. And that's super important for safety, right? It's why your power cords have that conductive copper inside and that safe insulating rubber on the outside.
Now, to get those electrons to do something useful, we need to build them a racetrack. We call this an electric circuit. It's just a complete, closed loop that lets the electrons flow from a power source, like a battery, go through something to do work, like lighting up a bulb, and then travel all the way back to where they started.
And that's exactly what a light switch does. When the circuit is open, it means there's a gap in the racetrack. The electrons hit a dead end and the flow stops. That's your light switch in the off position. When you flip it on, you're closing that gap, completing the circuit, and boom, the electrons can flow and the light comes on.
All right, so we've got a closed path, our circuit, and it's made of a conductive material. But what's the engine? What gives those electrons the initial shove to get moving around that circuit in the first place? All right, first up, you've got voltage. Just think of it as electrical pressure, or the push. It's the force that gets all those electrons to stop wandering around randomly and start moving in the same direction. Without voltage, there's no organized flow.
Next up is current. Now, if voltage is the push, then current is the flow. It's basically us counting how many electrons are zipping past a single point in the wire every second, and we measure that in something called amps.
And just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, get ready for this. For just 1 amp of current, you need about 6 quintillion, 242 quadrillion electrons to flow past a point in 1 second. Yeah, it's a completely mind-boggling number. That's why we just call it an amp.
And finally, we have the third key player, resistance. As all those electrons are flowing, they're not on a perfect superhighway. They're bumping and jostling and colliding with atoms in the wire. That opposition, that electrical friction, is what we call resistance, and we measure it in ohms. And all those collisions, they create heat. Sometimes that's a byproduct, but sometimes, like in a toaster or an old-school light bulb, that heat is the whole point.
Okay, the absolute best way to remember all this is the classic water pipe analogy. It's perfect. Voltage is the water pressure. That's the push. Current is the amount of water actually flowing through the pipe. And resistance, that's how narrow the pipe is. A skinny pipe creates a lot of resistance to the flow. These three are all linked by a rule called Ohm's law, which just says that if you have a narrow pipe, high resistance, you're going to need a lot more pressure, more voltage, to get the same amount of water to flow. It's this beautiful, simple relationship that's at the heart of all electronics. So once you get voltage, current, and resistance, you unlock something amazing. This incredible, fundamental partnership that exists in nature between electricity and magnetism. They're two sides of the same coin.
It's all based on a mind-blowing principle called electromagnetic induction. And this is how pretty much all of our power gets made. It's this simple.
You move a magnet near a coil of wire. That moving magnetic field actually creates a voltage, a push in the wire. And if that wire is hooked up to a circuit, that push creates a current. That's all a generator is, just spinning a magnet inside a bunch of coiled up wire.
And you know what? This same magnetic magic is the secret behind transformers, too. You use a current in one coil to create a magnetic field, and that magnetic field then creates a voltage in a second coil right next to it. By changing how many loops of wire each coil has, we can easily step voltage way up for long-distance travel or step it way down to be safe for our homes. It's absolutely essential for our power grid.
So, all this electricity we're generating, it actually comes in two main flavors. And you use both of them every single day, probably without even thinking about it. They're called alternating current and direct current.
Okay, so what's the difference? Well, with alternating current, or AC, the electrons don't just flow in one direction. They actually wiggle back and forth, constantly reversing their direction. Direct current, or DC, is way simpler. It's like a river. The electrons just flow steadily in one single direction.
So where do you actually run into these? Well, AC is the stuff that comes out of your wall outlets. It's what powers the whole grid because it's so easy to change its voltage with transformers. DC, on the other hand, is the world of batteries. Your phone, your laptop, your car, even solar panels, they all operate on or produce that nice steady flow of direct current.
And that leaves us with a pretty interesting question for the future. You see, for over 100 years, the world ran on a grid built for AC power. But look around. So many of our modern gadgets, our phones, our computers, are all DC native. And with the rise of solar panels and batteries, which are also DC, you have to wonder, are we heading for a future that's more direct than alternating? It's something to think about the next time you plug in your phone.